My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Woe. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about some of my favorite memoirs. Now, I have had big kind of binge reading episodes with memoirs. There was a time probably about 5 years ago where that was one of the main things that I read. And since then I've cooled off a lot with memoirs, but they are still one of my favorite genres to read. And I totally get why some people are not as into memoirs. I do think that they kind of straddle the line between fiction and nonfiction in a way that I think makes some readers uncomfortable because they aren't confident as to the degree to which a narrator can be trusted to accurately represent his or her own life. Especially, I think that gets tricky if the recounting of that life impacts other people or portrays other people in that person's life in a not so great light. A great example of that comes to mind is Mommy Dearest by Joan Crawford's daughter. Yeah, that was a little rough on good old Joan, and I think has kind of irrevocably changed the way that the public perceives her. Nevertheless, I think that memoirs are just a really rich genre to explore, and I also think that they can be a very friendly point of entry to more literary fiction for folks because they tend to focus on lives that are kind of grander or more exciting. There's some plot there, but a good memoir, anyway, has a lot of beautiful prose, at least in my opinion and in my experience. So with that in mind, I thought that I would give you guys some recommendations and just sort of a sense of some of the memoirs that I've really enjoyed reading over the years. I'm going to break this up into a few different subgenres based on types of memoirs that I enjoy reading. So first, a couple that I would say fall into the category of lyrical or sort of beautiful memoir writing. The first one that comes to mind for me is The Glass Castle by Jeanette, I believe. This is one that I read when it first came out because I was working at Borders at the time, and I just remember really falling in love with it and then seeing it kind of gain momentum and more people reading it, and for good reason. It's beautifully written and a very touching story. Another memoir that I personally don't like all that much, but that I think is really kind of a seminal work in the genre, and that is undeniably beautifully written, is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. I would say that if you are going through some sort of grief or loss, that this potentially could be a good book for you because it recounts the year after Joan Didion, after her husband died, and sort of her processing that. And again, it didn't really fully connect with me because I found it to be a little tone deaf in terms of some of the privilege that was implicit in that narrative, but it is just undeniable in terms of its impact and in terms of just how wonderfully written it is. So there's another one for your consideration. Another subgenre of book that I read a lot of, and I feel a little weird talking about this, but it is something I've read quite a bit of, and I'll just share it with you, is Holocaust memoirs. Part of the reason I think I find this such an important genre is that, and if you go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., they will talk about this, is that I find it a really important aspect of remembering everything that happened in the Holocaust and educating myself and developing my own empathy to at least do my part to make sure that this never happens again. So, that's a little serious, but like I said, I have read a lot of these, and two of my favorites are Survival in Auschwitz from Primo Levi. I think that this is kind of one of the first classics of this genre, and it's really well written and of course very hard to read, but very good. And another one that is a classic of the high school curriculum, I feel like, is Night by Elie Wiesel, who I believe recently passed away, but this, won a Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm not the first person to say this is a good book. Another good one is Still Alive by Ruth Kluger, who I have that one somewhere around here, but I'm not sure where. But yeah, so that's a sampling of Holocaust memoirs that I have enjoyed. Next are spiritual memoirs. I think that there's a lot of these, actually. Not necessarily in my collection, but just generally, that is quite a large genre, and arguably the originator of this genre is Augustine with his Confessions. So, definitely a religious take on things there. But two ones that I wanted to highlight is Girl Meets God by Lauren Winner, which is a story of somebody with sort of an eclectic faith background, belief and non-belief, coming to Christian faith. I believe she is an Episcopalian pastor now. But this is just a very well written memoir, and I think was very impactful at the time it was released. And the other is Surprised by Joy, The Shape of My Early Life by C.S. Lewis. This is a really wonderful spiritual memoir, and I think that it has a lot of self-awareness, and I think that he does a nice job of kind of moving the story along, but in a way that is very engaging and moving. I'm biased because I do quite like C.S. Lewis, but this is the other one that I would recommend in terms of more spiritual related memoirs. Another kind of memoir that I do love are writing memoirs. I've talked about these previously, but I'll just give them another shout out. My three favorites are Mystery and Manners from Flannery O'Connor, which is beautiful and very kind of filled with philosophical musings. Bird by LaMott, who has just such a unique voice and brings a very individual perspective to writing and to life to the table, so I recommend that. And finally, On Writing from Stephen King, which is one of my all-time favorite books about writing and is just a really engaging memoir as well. So I highly recommend all three of these books if you like memoirs about writing. And then the last category that I wanted to mention is a celebrity memoir. So I often feel like celebrity memoirs are either not dishy enough, like I kind of want them to spill the tea, or they're not well written enough. I'm not going to bring up the example that came to mind, but I think it's rare to find one that has, you know, a pretty nice prose style as well as some level of kind of dishy interest. And to me, the person who has like nailed this genre is Andy Cohen. I get all of his books from the library, so I don't have any to show you, but I love his memoirs. They're just such gossipy, just shady fun. And if you are, you know, a fellow Real Housewife watcher, not proud, but I enjoy it, then you will enjoy these because the Real Housewives pop up all the time in bizarre situations and like crazy texts with Andy Cohen, whatever. But anyway, I just find his books really, really fun. So if you're looking for sort of a dishy celebrity memoir, I think he's really the one to go to. Okay, guys, I forgot. I like finished filming and was putting my shit away, and I didn't tell you about like what is literally my favorite memoir ever, and it sits right behind me normally. So anyway, My Life in France by Julia Child is amazing. It's beautifully written. When we're talking about like celebrity memoir, this is the best one ever. It's so, so good, and you can feel how much like love there is between her and her husband, and the way she talks about food is beautiful, etc., etc. So anyway, I felt like I couldn't leave without telling you guys about this, so I hope you'll forgive the kind of crappy setup for this. But anyway, yeah, this one, it's amazing. So those are some of the memoirs that I've most enjoyed over the years. Like I said, I've read a lot of these, so I'm sure that I'm leaving some of my favorites out. But if there's any of your favorites that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments. And yeah, let's get some recommendations going for people looking to dip their toes into the memoir pond. Besides that, like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. And yeah, that wraps this up. I will talk to you guys later. Bye!